It's important that we get the Republican perspective on this debacle of truck tolls, and so we will tonight.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
You know, it's funny, I ad-lib this show completely, and sometimes I say something and I think to myself, was that actually the right thing to say? I don't know if the minority leader should bear the responsibility or, you know, wear the entire GOP flag for an issue like the truck tolls. In fact, there's some, I think, still apparent disparity inside the Republican Party in terms of how to battle the Democratic establishment that ran that thing down our throats. But nonetheless, I'm looking forward to having Brian Newberry, the minority leader, here in a matter of minutes to kind of talk about that. His idea for an investigation that fell flat, but I think creative, no doubt, and get his perspective on where we go from here. So great to have you in. Thank you very much for tuning in to My State of Mind. Let's go over to this side of the studio and check out the rundown. And yeah, this is, speaking of Republicans, woo! Maybe Brian's got a thought on this as well. Now it's threats and dares over lawsuits, and it just gets crazy. The latest headlines look like this. Trump, I'm very seriously looking at suing Ted Cruz because of his lies and ties to Canada. And of course, Ted Cruz rebuffs and says, you know, bring it at me, baby. And of course, Donald Trump cries and cries about Ted Cruz being a liar, liar, pants on fire.
You have to be truthful. And Ted Cruz is not a truthful person. He holds up the Bible and then he lies. What he did to Ben Carson, what he did with the voter violation form in Iowa as an example, where they wrote a form out that looked just like a government paper and it says go vote for Ted Cruz, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. I mean, there are a lot of lies and a lot of bad statements, and I see it happening now in South Carolina where robocalls are being made saying things that are just untrue.
In the modern age, they call that politics. I don't know. And of course, Ted Cruz has his own higher level response.
Both Donald Trump and Marco Rubio are following this pattern, that whenever anyone points to their actual record, to what they've said, to what they've voted on, to what they've done, they start screaming, liar, liar, liar. I mean, it is the oddest thing. I can't think of any precedent in any previous Republican presidential election. Now, from my end, I have not and will not respond in kind. If they want to engage in personal insults, if they want to go to the mud, I'm not going to say the same thing about them. I think the people of South Carolina deserve more.
You always get the candidate who's being attacked as the liar or whatever to say, well, I'm not going to go that way until such time as he goes that way. But, you know, Cruz may be gaining ground on Donald Trump. Wall Street Journal poll indicates that he's 2 points ahead, but then CBS came out with one today that says that Donald is 13 points ahead. So who knows? The real poll will be the voters who come out in the primary in South Carolina for the Republicans on Saturday. But here's the thing that I don't understand about Donald Trump, amongst a litany of things I don't understand about Donald Trump. If you're really serious about the eligibility of Ted Cruz to be the president, given his birth in Canada, that should be an intrinsic concern. It shouldn't be something that you're going to litigate depending on if he stops lying. The approach that Donald Trump takes is that of a 12-year-old on everything. Meanwhile, Marco Rubio scores quite the endorsement, the very popular governor in South Carolina, headline here, of course, that could change everything, and she made quite the stellar speech for him.
It is a great day in South Carolina, but it will be a great day in America when we have President Marco Rubio. Help me remember the next President of the United States.
Thank you.
The only thing that confuses me about that is whether she wants to remember him or introduce him. Kind of spooky in some ways, don't you think? Big endorsement for Rubio, who sits kind of drafting in third place in the South Carolina primary, if you believe the consensus of all the polls. And it feels like the beginning of the establishment of the party trying to grab some roots. You know, the South Carolina governor is very popular, a potential vice presidential nominee, in fact. But it's not going to mean anything unless the other three guys get out of the way. That would be Bush, Kasich, and Carson. And so far, there's no indication they will, although the South Carolina result may push one or two of them over the edge. We'll see. In the meantime, the national conversation about the Supreme Court after Justice Alito passes away continues to dominate, Washington and beyond. And the former Supreme Court Justice retired, made her own suggestion. The headline here reads, "Act," and the president, I think, makes quite the common sense point about doing so.
President Obama is not backing down from the fight to replace Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia after his death. The Republicans plan to block any nomination Mr. Obama makes and believe the next president should pick the nominee.
We're just not going to move this nominee because it's going to allow the next president to fill this seat. It's a decisive seat on the court.
The president believes it is his prerogative to pick a replacement judge and expects a fair Senate hearing from his nomination.
The Constitution is pretty clear about what is supposed to happen now. When there is a vacancy on the Supreme Court, the President of the United States is to nominate someone.
The right is now pointing to a younger Senator Obama who filibustered President George W. Bush's nomination of Samuel Alito.
Yeah, I think that's somewhat irrelevant. What a senator does in the Senate versus what a president does, even though they may be the same people, really isn't a matchup. The Republicans have played their cards so quickly and so ferociously here is a puzzle to me as well. They could sit back, play rope-a-dope, have all sorts of problems, and run the clock out, more or less, on this nomination, rather than creating a divisive atmosphere by saying, we're not going to respond, so please don't make a nomination. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. I don't understand their strategies nationally or locally most times. And I probably lean toward their issues, but their way of doing business is striking. PC is skidding. Ooh, another loss at Xavier. They're soon to be out of the top 25 for sure. And if they don't turn this baby around, they're going to get a real bad seed in the tournament or, God forbid, worse, not make it. No one's suggesting that right now, but, between URI struggling like they are, having to make an A10 tournament run just to get some kind of post-tournament berth, and PC having its fits and starts right now, what we anticipated to be a great March might be an early golf season for all of us. So come on, boys. Get it together. All right. Now, I don't have to remind you what happened the other day, right, when the governor signed legislation. Boy, she didn't let any grass grow under her feet at all. My goodness, the Senate voted, and I think about 10 seconds later, she had a signing ceremony. Was she afraid that something was going to happen, you think?
I think she wanted to get it out of there and get people out of town before the masses came out with the pitchforks. That's what I think was going on there.
Welcome in, Minority Leader Brian Newberry. Give me we got a lot of nuances here to discuss, but give me your gut check on what the heck just happened here.
I think the Democrats ramrodded a legislation through to help some of their supporters. I think it was a bad bill, and I think they wanted to get it out and hope the election comes way, way down the road because people are angry, I can tell you that.
Timing being what it is, I'm not certain that come fall with the presidential race and all that, whatever other controversies develop, that the truck tolls will be so front and center because there won't be any apparent on the highways yet.
That may be true, but I got to tell you something. I've been in office my 8th year, and I've never seen people come out of the woodwork on an issue like they have on this. A lot of times as reps, we get contacted by people in our districts, and there's people that contact us all the time on various issues. I've been contacted by people that I've never really even heard of before. I mean, they're in my district, but I don't remember ever hearing from them, and it's been almost universally opposed. There's about 3 people in my district who think this was a good idea, and 2 of them are professional lobbyists, who testified in favor of it. So I don't know if I really want to count them on that.
All right, hold your thought, because you did some creative things at the end there to try to bring some attention to the political pressure that was involved. So we'll talk to Brian about that in a second. I just wanted to make mention here that one of our fine sponsors, Cumberland Kitchen and Bath Design Center, is a place that you really ought to consider when it comes to renovating either your kitchen or your bath. I am currently celebrating the near end of the process to have my kitchen renovated, and Rita Beck was my project manager. She's the owner, and when you have a project manager who's a designer who can make sure that all the licensed and insured contract work is done to the spec that they were promised to be done, it's a pleasure. So the way and the process that Cumberland Kitchen Bath Design Center works is something that I think you should consider if you're thinking about it. And if you're thinking about it, contact Cumberland Kitchen Bath Design Center right now because they will come to your home for what's called a free measure. just to shoot the breeze about it. I think you'll enjoy the process. Right back with Representative Newberry. Stay with us. So amongst the things that was interesting about the end of the truck toll voting saga was the notion that Democrats were kind of articulating to their customers, meaning you, the constituent, that they felt a little pressure. There was a headline in the Ocean State Current, and we had a program talking about it, where at least one legislator, mine, Mia Ackerman in Cumberland, talked about worrying that if she didn't support this legislation, some DOT projects may not get done in her, meaning our district, and that caused Brian Newberry, my guest here, to say, maybe we ought to look into this little situation, and you wrote a letter, Maria, to the House Speaker, which I thought was interesting, well thought out, diplomatic. What you're saying is, hey, I've never seen this kind of pressure before, but it's out there, and maybe we ought to investigate it.
Well, there was a letter, as you pointed out, it's a letter online from your rep saying that she was pressured by DOT to vote for the tolls. However, it didn't reference her district, so clearly it was a form letter.
Well, it referenced another district.
Another district, right,
It was
exactly.
District 27, and when I first read it on the radio, I thought, oh my gosh, did these guys change the district numbers? And it was not until the next day that I realized that she had just copied and pasted Representative Serpa's letter in District 45, in District 27, we're 45, that she borrowed the homework.
Exactly. So it made me wonder how many other people are borrowing the homework, as you put it. And
Right.
look, one of two things happened. Either DOT was actually pressuring these folks, or these people were misleading their constituents. I think one or the other. There really is no in between here. So my point was to go to the Speaker and say, look, if DOT is really pressuring these people, as your reps are claiming they are, that's outrageous. So you better look into it. And his response tells me all I need to know. And if you read between the lines what he's saying, we looked into it. It wasn't DOT. Some of our reps were misleading their constituents, and we're going to deal with that privately. That's how I interpret his response. So there you go.
Well, here's the thing. As I said to you on the radio when you wrote this letter last week, and I'll say again, I think, and you had a funny response, I couldn't figure out whether you were playing with his head or whether you missed the broad side of the barn. I'm guessing, because you're a pretty smart guy, you were more playing with his head. If anybody was muscling the Democratic representatives in the House, it was the Speaker himself.
Oh.
I mean, I literally was hearing from representatives and people who know representatives that they were working around with the crib notes on that which was going to be killed in their district, whether it's DOT or not, if they did not vote for the truck tolls.
That was reported in the Province Journal, actually.
Right.
Yeah, it came right out and said there were leadership people going around and saying, these are the projects in your district. Now, they had an explanation for that and all that. That also happened on the Senate side. I heard from some of the senators, too. Didn't happen to Republicans in the House, I think, because they assumed we were a lost cause. We're going to support this anyway. But yeah, there was clearly, I've never seen more arm twisting on a piece of legislation than I
But
saw
did you
on this.
do you think? I mean, were you playing with the Speaker's head, kind of saying, "Hey, listen, you may look at the DOT; they may be forcing these people," when in fact, you know, the real culprit is the Speaker himself.
Well, it could have been the real culprit, or maybe he was being told by DOT that this was going to happen, Dan. We don't really know the truth on this, do we?
Why are you being coy?
I really want to know. Here's what I want to know. I want to know, did people vote for this bill because they thought it was the right thing to do, or did they vote for this bill because they were threatened to do so, either by the Speaker, which is par for the course in a legislative body, or by the DOT, or did no threats come at all? Why did they vote for this bill? I'd like you to ask your rep why they voted for this bill.
I can't find her.
Well, that's a different story.
We can't find her.
A lot of them seem to have been AWOL since the vote. That's why it was done right before vacation, by the way. But this bill was a bad piece of legislation.
Awful.
Everybody knows it. And by the way, to be clear, the issue here is not should we fix our infrastructure. Let me be very clear. Not should we fix our infrastructure and should we put the construction trades back to work. The issue is how do we pay for it?
Yes, I want to talk to you about that and where we go from here in our next segment. I do want to bring up, though, for just a second, as we talked about on the radio, Kev, can you play Patricia Morgan's struggle at Capitol Television? Well, on Capitol Television at the General Assembly during a hearing at the end when she was looking for more information.
Did not receive all of the information that we
Representative Morgan, you're out of order. Representative
I know.
Cannavale?
You can keep saying that, but the truth of the matter is I am not, because I am
409 substitute A.
I am entitled to the information.
Please.
They treated her so poorly. It's unsportsmanlike would be an understatement. Agreed?
Oh yeah, that behavior speaks for itself. That was terrible. There's no excuse for the way Chairman Galson treated her. There's also a backstory to how they got there, which is all the Democrats' fault too. It stems from the hearing the week before, which was cut off before she could ask the questions she'd been promised she'd be allowed to ask of the DOT director. They cut the hearing off, promised her they'd bring him back, and then never did. And that's why she got up at that point and said, I want to ask questions of the guy. And at that point, they're trying to ram the bill through, and they were like, no, no, no. That's the backstory there. It was completely bullying tactics and outrageous
You
tactics.
sit ex officio on the committee.
I do. I wasn't there at the hearing that you were just televising.
I was just disappointed, angry actually, about the lack of support for Patricia Morgan. Listen, I think you've said all the right things here. But where was the all for one for all type of cover her flank in the hours and day after this whole thing?
Well, to be fair, at that hearing, it's hard to see when you see it on TV because the sound gets muffled out, just like on a show like this is background noise. I don't know what was going on with the other people in the finance hearing at that point. I'm sure people were sticking up for it. You may not have been able to see it on camera. As I said to you on the radio, I didn't even find out what happened until a few hours later. At that point, it was already all over the radio and TV. And I said, look, it's outrageous. It speaks for itself. I mean, I don't know what else I was supposed to really say. You know?
Well, it just seems to me that I think Pat Morgan, who has been kind of a warrior on this, she was hung out to dry early in the season when she said, hey, look, I have to withdraw my complaints on this particular issue because she didn't have the support of her own fellow Republicans. Last session, not this session, right? Last session, what month are we in? February? The last time that she took this issue, there was an amendment that she wanted to provide, and she had to sit down because she had nobody behind her in the alley. And that was embarrassing for her and for, I think, the Republicans. And this time she got the tar beat out of her and nobody was standing up. And all I'm saying is, while you have been articulate and you have been accurate and correct, I think, in all these issues, as some of your colleagues have, it doesn't feel like there's a team battling.
Now, to be clear, last year during the budget, she tried to put in an amendment that was clearly beyond the bounds of the rules. She got up, she ruled out of order. I did stand up and defend her in that. Again, you can only see what's focused.
Well, let me ask you this, in general, this is the moment for Republicans in the state, it seems to me.
I think this will be the issue of the fall. I do. I don't think that
I don't know if you've made enough noise about it now for people to remember that in the fall.
Oh, I think there's ways to make noise, and you got to keep the story alive and keep people's memories focused on it. You know, social media is very helpful in that too. I don't think the state GOP is going to let this issue go. In fact, I was saying the videos of some of the floor speeches in opposition to the tolls are already up on Facebook, online, on YouTube, and one of my videos got 4,500 views in 2 days, which is really unheard of. And as I said earlier, I'm having people come out of the woodwork in my district. I actually had about 24 emails from people outside my district the night of the debate thanking me for standing up on the floor. That's never happened before. I would say in 8 years I've probably gotten maybe 7 total over, and maybe one a year.
We'll see as we go what the fall brings. But when we come back, we'll talk about what happens now, because there are a lot of dangling participles, like major businesses that are thinking we're going to stop doing our thing unless we get some kind of financial rebate or something. Stay with us.
The speaker said tomorrow that I'm going to, now that I'm pivoting to help the trucking industry, we're going to do something that will at least approach what we were originally thinking. And, one way or the other, we're going to help these guys out. I'll put the shovel in tomorrow. I'm not asking anybody to give me exact how you're going to do it. Just tell me that you want to try to do this, because I know anything that you want, you've proven it to me, you can get your way.
Mark Perlman, pretty creative answer on my radio show yesterday, talking about Ocean State Job Lot. He's the CEO. He has suspended his 500,000 square foot project, $50 million investment that he has his own list of incentives and subsidies for, to the tune of maybe $7.5 million. But the $1 million price tag that he says will be put on him additionally by truck tolls causes him some pause. You can hear what he's saying. He wants a spiritual commitment from the speaker. Mr. Minority Leader, I don't see what the speaker can give him in the context of truck tolls, because the subsidies were pulled out and everything else is lawsuit material.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, one of the more interesting debates and a little bit esoteric debates on the floor during the debate was about my attempt to put the subsidies back in. I know they were pulled out because of a concern they were unconstitutional. Now, are they? I don't know, but that's why they were pulled out. I don't know what the state can do for these businesses now that is not going to be fodder for a lawsuit.
People should know what I mean by that, and what Brian means by that. The subsidies give local companies at a financial advantage, a break or a cap on tolls and the like. And the trucking industry says, wait a second, those trucks are no different than our trucks, and you can't do that.
There's a feature called the Dormant Commerce Clause. And I won't go into great detail, but it's an aspect of constitutional law. It's usually a little esoteric, but one of the leading cases came out of Massachusetts about 20 years ago. If people want to look it up, they can see those things probably are unconstitutional. Even if they're done in a separate piece of legislation, the argument's going to be made. So I don't know what we're going to do for these folks.
Well, in the meantime, the speaker is saying, well, listen, we're going to buckle down and we're going to do something for them. And Mr. Perlman is waiting for something more tangible, and I think he's going to be blue in the face and have to make a decision independently on his own, whether he wants to go ahead with his project or whether he's going to live true to his statement, which is if you don't give me something, and he's looking, by the way, for 70% relief from what they're projected on paying. Yeah. Where's that going to lead?
Let me put something else too. This goes to the heart of the debate about economic development in this state. You don't do economic development by giving handouts to any business, either homegrown or outside the state. You do economic development by making the entire business climate favorable. And you don't do that by enacting tolls on the trucking industry, because every business gets affected by that. That's my major difference of opinion with the governor and her whole economic development strategy, which goes into our budget proposals and everything else. We need to make Rhode Island a place where businesses have across the board a good environment, not favored businesses, be they good ones or not, get subsidies. It's not right.
Amen to you. Last night, Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee was here responding to Mr. Perlman saying, look, you may be right, Dan. I don't know what the speaker can do, but he advised the business community the following. Listen.
I think the small business community is in a very unique position, just like Mr. Perlman is, to sit there and say, hey, okay, you're going to do something like that? Well, let's make sure that we do more than our share on the other side of the table.
It's like he wants to create a wish list for, on the radio today, I asked businesses, and I got a lot of businesses that listen to the show. Crickets. Nobody can even think of it because nobody trusts government to actually be able to do what they say they're going to do anyway.
Why don't we lessen the regulatory burden, lower the tax burden, and lower the cost of government? That would solve a lot of our problems. That's something Republicans in Rhode Island have been saying for years.
It's kind of like you and me preaching to the choir. Where does this leave us? Damaged. I feel in a lot of ways we've been abused by this process, and the damage is going to be long-term, and And please, if I hear the notion one more time, the cars are protected, that legislation is only as good as the paper it's printed on.
The only protection that cars have is the logistics of whether we can toll them or not. Because, diversion is a problem with cars. But the idea that they're legally protected is a joke. One of the most cynical things about this legislation is the idea, it's one of the talking points the Democrats have. Well, we're not going to be able to toll cars without a referendum. Any legislature in the future can withdraw that. And obviously, if they want to toll cars, they're going to withdraw it. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And, if you get a discrimination lawsuit that says, you can only do X and X, it mitigates what you're generating from the trucks. Oh, yeah. You have diversion. You either have to raise the tolls on trucks, expand the number of trucks and the kinds of trucks, and or go to the cars. And so, and the leader and the governor look at us like we have three heads when we suggest such.
Well, the daily cap they put in on the new legislation, the $40 per day, that you could argue that that's unconstitutional because it's clearly designed to benefit the in-state truckers who are going back and forth and not the through truckers. I think that's going to be a major component of the lawsuit. This legislation could be ruled unconstitutional, and the really annoying thing about this is, as I understand it, there's no standing to bring a lawsuit until they start to actually toll the truck. So we might be investing a lot of money as a state, plus all the damage to our reputation, and then find this legislation is actually unconstitutional.
And then the only mitigating factor will be, oh, well, everyone gets treated equally, including the automobiles.
Or we have to start from scratch, and we don't actually get any of the infrastructure improvements done. Because these projects don't just start like that.
All right, well, I'll come back when you want to talk about your Republican initiatives. And there are some this year, right?
Yeah, there always are.
All right.
I just articulated them. The problem is that Democrats don't listen to us. They started to last year. I'd be fair. 2015, they started to. This year,
we'll talk about how legitimate the fall contention will be. We're out of time, but it's always great. Thanks. Appreciate it, Brian. Final word next. So they say wait to November, the Republicans do. We'll have plenty of time to keep that conversation going. Good luck to them. By the way, I still am looking for Mia Ackerman, my state representative, the Democrat. She's under a desk somewhere in Cumberland. If you find her, will you let her know that we'd like to have her sit where Brian was sitting? That will be a conversation that would be well worthwhile for all of us. You have a good night. Bye.